Welcome to We the Village podcast. I'm your host, Selena Thomas. This show is for us, women, men, and everyone living in a community. On this show, we celebrate and highlight our stories and our village because we can't do it alone. On today's show, we will be talking to Joi Copeland about her career as a Christian fiction writer, about hearing the voice of God, moving to and living in Ireland, and building her international village. Welcome, Joi, to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yes. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
My name is Joi Copeland, and I am a daughter of the King, first and foremost. I'm a wife, a mom of 3 boys. Chris and I have been married for almost 25 years this July.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And our boys, we have 3, and they are 22, almost 21, 22, 20, and 19. 2 of them live in Colorado, and 1 lives here with us in Ireland.
How long have you been in Ireland?
We have been in Ireland for 4 years come this July.
Wow. We will come back and talk about that some more. Is there something that brings you daily joy?
My boy, Gage, who lives with us, I love hearing him laugh on a daily basis. That brings me joy. Talking to or getting a text from my other 2 and laughing with my husband. Yeah, those things bring
love
me
that.
daily joy.
And peppermint mocha.
And peppermint mocha, yes. Oh, so good.
I read somewhere in one of your bios that you love the weather in Ireland. So cold, rainy.
Yeah. Yesterday we actually had sun, which was new. It seems for spring for us. We had a little bit of sun yesterday. Today it's windy and rainy and colder. And I love the rain. I do. I can't get enough of it. So when I'm out and about with people here, they'll say sarcastically, "Oh, how do you like the weather?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I love it." And they look at me like I'm from a different planet. But
that's how I would look at you, because we had a little bit of rain here in Southern California recently. And I'm just like, when is this rain going to be over? Please let the sun out again. I am so ready for that summertime. To start off, I wanted to talk to you about your career as a writer, how that came about. You have over 20 books on Amazon. So tell us about the kind of books that you write and how you got into writing.
Well, I started writing. Well, I've always loved writing ever since I was young. But when Chris and I and the boys moved to Colorado from California, we were living with my sister and brother-in-law and their 2 boys. And they had said to me one day, "Joi, you're homeschooling. And aside from that, you're not doing a whole bunch. Why don't you start writing?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's great." And so I sat down, I think the next day, and just started writing my first book. And since then, I have written, like you said, over 20, mostly shorter, less than 150 pages. I'm working on getting them a little bit longer. But I write Christian romance with hope and redemption and a whole lot of Jesus stuck in there, just to draw people closer to their faith and to, just in their faith, and just kind of push them more toward Jesus than anything.
Are your books geared towards any particular audience?
Mostly, I do have a few men actually who do read my books, which is a lot of fun when I get emails from them. But mostly toward women. Yeah, women really seem to enjoy them, and I get emails back from them. I have a newsletter that I send out once a week. And yeah, I really am able to chat back and forth with a lot of people. It's been great.
Oh, that's awesome. So how do you get ideas for your stories?
It's funny. I was actually an author friend of mine. She, on Facebook, she had said, people ask how you come up with stories. And she said, "Have you never heard of eavesdropping?" Which is so true. So, that's just what I do. We'll be out in a shop and I'll hear someone talk and I'll go, "Oh, that's a really interesting idea. I wonder what would happen if I took it to another level." Or, I'll read historical, because a lot of my books are historical fiction
Mhm.
set in the West. And I'll read a lot of those and I'll go, oh, that's an interesting premise, but I wonder if we twisted it and did it this way instead of going to the way that that author had taken it. And so it's just a lot of fun being able to listen and hear people's stories, and everybody has a story. It's just,
That's right. That's exactly
yeah.
why this podcast exists. I feel like everybody
Mhm.
has a story. You know, we live this ordinary life, it seems like, but when you start actually listening and talking to people, each friend of mine, each person that I come across, they have such unique and beautiful stories. So that
Mhm.
is really fun that you get to kind of put a little historical fiction on that and make those stories come alive. Do
Yeah.
people ever recognize themselves or their life story in your books?
If I do use their story, I will definitely give them credit at the very beginning. Yeah. Because
That is cool.
it's not from my own imagination that it came about. It came from them. And so I want them, as long as they're okay with it. So yeah, I never use it outside of asking their permission.
Oh, that's
But yeah.
awesome. Is there a village, a community among the writers, or is this more of a solitary thing that you do?
Oh no, I could never do it without the community. The authors that I am in connection with, I have a mentor, and she mentors about 6 or 7 of us once a month. We all gather on Zoom because we're scattered throughout the world, from England to Ireland to the States. And we just chat and we just listen to her advice and her wisdom. And we're able to really have a good conversation with her. And then outside of that, you have authors who are encouraging you and putting you in their newsletters, and
Mm.
just walking alongside of you in your triumphs and your failures. And yeah, it's definitely a community based. I could not do it without the other authors encouraging me, guiding me, and helping me along on the journey.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mhm.
What is your writing process like? Is this something that you do daily, or is this when inspiration hits and you've got that juicy bit of, thing that you overheard?
I have a great editor who keeps me on track. So she will tell me, I'll tell her my books that I have due. And so she tells me, okay, these are the dates that I want them by. And so I have to write almost every day, if not every day, at least 2,000 words a day. And so, yeah, Barbara's just my, okay, Joy, stop messing around. Get on, focused, get in gear.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think about there was a season when I would write a lot of songs. So songwriting is similar in a way where you listen for those little interesting twists on words
Mm,
or a concept, and then you start developing it a little bit further. Listening seems to be the key to getting those creative ideas, but then
mhm.
discipline hits, and then you have to actually sit down
Yeah.
and write something. It doesn't just write itself, right?
Right. Yeah, I do spend a lot of time in front of my computer doing this. So, when people think of authors, they expect us to be like pounding away at the keyboard, but it's a lot of, do I want to say it that way? I don't think I want to say it that way. How do I want to say this? Where's my idea? Where'd that go? Oh, there it is. Yeah, so yeah, it's a lot of typing and then deleting and then typing and deleting.
It sounds like you really enjoy the process, though.
I do. I love writing. It's such a joy to be able to do that and create stories. And my biggest mantra through writing is giving God the glory. And so when that stops happening, then I'll stop writing.
The next topic I wanted to talk to you about is this concept of hearing the voice of God. How do you hear from God? I know you guys have patiently waited, heard from God, and moved your family to Ireland. What did that look like for you?
My husband he'd wanted to do something different with his life. And so in 2012, I want to say, he had said, I need to do something. And I said, well, why don't you start praying that God would give you direction, whether it be a new vocation, climbing up the corporate ladder, if you should go into teaching, whatever. I had no idea at the time that God would impress on Chris's heart that it was missions. that he wanted us to go into. And so I often look back and go, what if I had told him to pray about it? I know that's what he would have done. But the answer is a wholehearted yes, absolutely. So yeah, Chris spent about 9 months praying about what he should do. And then he just kept feeling like, he said that it was an impression on his heart, missions, missions. And he kept going back and forth with God going, Joi is not adventurous. She doesn't like to travel. And I don't. I'm a homebody through and through. I do enjoy traveling, but not across the country or across the world, And also I have anxiety. And so that was huge in Chris saying, he was just praying and telling God, look, she's on anxiety medication. If you call us to a third world country, what's it going to look like? And is she going to be on board? And so it was a drawn out process for him until one day we were at church, and I forget what even had popped up, but I turned to Chris and I said, gosh, do you think we missed our calling? Maybe we should have been missionaries. And Chris just jumped on that and he said, yes, let's go. And I was like, what? No. And so I dropped that conversation for a solid week where I just battled and wrestled with God. And I was like, you are not calling me to the field, right, God? You're not. My sister and her husband just came back from Kenya. You're not calling me to the mission field. Tell me you're not. And I just, it's that still small voice that just kept saying, talk to Chris. And I was like, I don't want to talk to Chris. But I did. And he told me what he felt like the Lord was telling him. And I said, okay, if God is calling us to go, I'd rather obey than get swallowed by a giant fish. It's just, I don't like fish. And so to be swallowed by one just doesn't sound good. So
if you don't know the story of Jonah and the whale, that is what Joi is referring to. If you're a Christian, then you know the story of that book of Jonah in the Bible.
Yeah.
I thought about becoming a missionary when I was younger, and I did like a short-term exploratory trip to Kiev, Ukraine, actually. I wanted to go into YWAM and do like a discipleship training there. What stopped me is the fundraising.
I get it.
I wanted to pay my own way. So I earned some money. I had some money in the bank, and then I left for 2 weeks. And in talking to the leadership there at Kiev DTS, I remember saying, but I hate asking people for money. I hate fundraising. Like, I feel like I should just earn the money, put it in the bank account, and then come and do the mission trip. And what I heard back was that sooner or later, that money runs out. And you still have to rely on God and his people to partner with you in this work. Yeah. Soon after we got married, we got, into raising kids right away. The desire is still there to do that at some point, but it just has not worked out for us just yet. But that was my experience with that. I know you guys partner with a lot of people, and I would say they're probably part of your village, right?
They are.
So what is it like to collect this village of people who partner with your work in Ireland?
It's humbling. Like you said, asking people, will you support God's call in our life to move to a country where people are like, why are you going to Ireland? They know Jesus over there, and actually they don't. And so to actually go and talk with people and have them see our vision and being here and living here and asking them to walk alongside of us here financially and through prayer, it's very humbling. And it was so hard, and it's still hard to do that. But knowing that we wouldn't be here without them. So we are here because of the people who are faithfully partnering with us in prayer and finances and encouragement and support. I mean, there are days where we can be so down, and we'll get an email, and it's so encouraging and uplifting knowing that people in the States they haven't forgotten us. that they are here with us in spirit and just fighting our battle on their knees. And it's a beautiful, beautiful realization every day to wake up to.
Well, I'm on your mail list, so I read all of your emails, and it's always a joy to see the joys of what you guys are walking through and then the prayer requests. So, you guys got to Ireland during COVID.
We did. Yeah.
So, for somebody moving to a new country, not knowing anybody during the beginning stages of COVID, I do remember you guys talking about how lonely it was to
Yeah.
leave your village back in Colorado and United States and move
Mhm.
to this new place where God has called you only to be quarantined and sheltered in a small home.
Mhm.
You did manage to build a village there in Ireland. Can you think of some moments or how that came about and what it took to step out and start making friendships there?
Yeah. It was hard, like you said, because Ireland was one of the strictest countries in Europe for their lockdown and their restrictions. And so we didn't actually start to make good solid friendships until, gosh, I want to say 2022, maybe. So a good year and a half to 2 years of being in Ireland. And it was a lonely time, because we were restricted so much. And, you have to go to church and you have to wear the masks. And everybody in Ireland, they did what the government said to do. It's just what you did. And it was a struggle to be able to meet with people. And so when the war in Ukraine happened, we received a lot of refugees here, and that had to end all of the restrictions, because how do you put restrictions on people who may not have gotten the vaccine, who, you can't quarantine 40,000 people for 2 weeks, and so that ended our restrictions. And so at that point, Chris and I were like, okay, yeah, it's good to be able to start to meet people. So we actually started a marriage Bible study in our home, and that brought some amazing people that we've really bonded with and connected with. And I call her my bestie. She's my bestie here in Ireland. So whether or not she wanted to be, Trisha is my bestie here, and she's stuck with me now. And there's no, and she's fine. She's fine with it. And so, yeah, it's just been great to be able to have that relationship. Chris and her husband are friends, and we've gotten closer to other people in our marriage group and in the church now. And because we can stand there and talk and have discussions and meet for coffee, because we can now go to a coffee shop. It's just been absolutely brilliant.
That is really awesome. So, your boys moved with you guys to Ireland, but shortly after, two of your sons moved back to the States. Can you talk about living continents apart with your kids? Seems like you're a
Sure.
stage ahead of where we are as we're raising teenagers.
Yep. Yeah, Garrison actually stayed back in Colorado for school, so he didn't move with us here, and that was hard. When your kids start to go to college, you send them out, and then they can come back home and do their laundry or go shopping in your cupboard if they need it. Um, for us, we we left him behind, and he chose to stay behind. We chose to leave, and there was no coming home on the weekends. There was no seeing him once a month. That was hard. It was a lot harder, I think, than I anticipated. Well, we do FaceTime. I get him by myself every other Monday, and Chris gets him every other Monday. And so, yeah, I mean, he and I just had a 2 hour conversation on Monday night. It was wonderful, um, longer than normal. And so people are like, wait, Garrison talked for 2 hours? It was fun. He's a really quiet one, our oldest. And then when Gavin had decided to go back, he's been back for about a year. A year ago, January, he moved back. And that was another blow that I wasn't prepared for. I thought that when God called us to Ireland, he called all 5 of us. And that in my naive way of thinking, we would all love it here It would be our home. We'd have like, they'd live close by, they'd get married and have kids. And that's not, it's not the way it happened. So Gavin and Garrison both live overseas, and I chat with, gosh, I think I chat with Gavin almost every day on Instagram. Just being able to chat with him and see how he's doing. And yeah, it's hard to live a world apart, it feels like. But through God's grace, he's given us the gift of technology, and it's such a blessing to be able to jump on Instagram or call him instead of having to send a letter through the mail and wait for 2 to 3 weeks before they get it and then send one back. So yeah, it's hard launching them out, and I would much rather them be close to home, but you've got to support them in what they feel that they need to be doing and the direction that they're going in.
Yeah, it almost feels like the death of a dream. Like you envisioned your journey to Ireland in one way, and then people have their own wills and opinions and thoughts. How dare they? Especially kids, right?
Yeah, those teenagers.
What did your prayer life look like when you were heartbroken at that point? Did you ever doubt or question your choices about moving to Ireland? Did I hear you right, God? Because this means that our family is now continents apart.
Well, I was angry. The problem was that too, because we moved in the midst of COVID, Garrison hadn't graduated from school yet because they kept postponing his graduation ceremony. And so we missed his high school graduation because according to our pre-clearance visa, we had to be in Ireland before his ceremony. And I was angry. I was angry at God because I said I was not going to miss his high school graduation in person. And it was a struggle. I was very adamant, like, how dare you call me to give up my son for your kingdom? And that was a very convicting, but very real response that I had. And then, the whole Christian thing is that God gave up his son for me. And so that was, but I was angry. It took me a good long while not to be angry about that and to grieve that loss in a healthy manner, which I think is why a lot of the anxiety that I had stemmed from that as well. And then I was able to come to terms a little bit easier with Gavin going back because he wasn't thriving in Ireland. And I want my children to thrive. I don't want them to survive.
Yeah.
And so to come to terms with not my will be done, but God's, and then help my kids to thrive wherever they go. But it was a battle. It's hard when you see your kids go, and it was a death of a dream. And so there was definitely the grieving process and the tears and the missing them, and driving from when we drove Gavin to the airport coming home, Gage had said, I feel like the laughter in our house is going to be gone.
Oh.
And that Chris and I just cried all the way home that day. But then later that night, we did have some laughter. So it was good that wasn't accurate. But yeah, my prayer life was hard, and it was like, just, raw, I could say, just raw.
What do you know about God on the other side of that now?
He is faithful. He is big enough to handle all of my anger and frustration, and he's loving enough to let me sit in it and to walk through it with me and not let me go. When you're grieving, you don't need to hear the words, well, God's got a reason. That's one pastor had said, when somebody's grieving, you show up and you shut up. We had people in our life who just showed up and they just let us grieve. And so it was amazing because God brought people to walk alongside of us. He revealed himself in ways that just made me realize even more so how much of that Abba Father he truly is. Oh. And it's beautiful. Yeah.
I love that. You have a little village that is watching your life in Ireland. I think of your D&D group that meets in your home. with
Yep.
your kids? Because the ministry did end up being with your children, right? And
Mhm.
they made some friends that have become your foster kids or adopted
Absolutely.
children that come to your home. I think
Yep.
that is like the best thing about ministering, living in this country, is that you guys have adopted these young people and you just walk alongside them.
Mhm.
Can you tell me about this fun way of collecting people and discipling them in your own home?
Gage and Gavin, before Gavin left, they absolutely love D&D, and so they just really they started talking to one of their friends at school, and he was like, "Hey, I'm into D&D," and that just brought about this whole group of kids who would come, and every Sunday they would play for hours, like 6 to 8 hours they would play. So,
Real quick,
oh yeah,
D&D is Dungeons and Dragons.
yes,
It's can you explain a little bit about what that is?
it's a role playing game. Not like they put on costumes and that, but they do take on the accents, and so like some of them are dwarves or wizards or I don't even know all the lingo for it, but they just take on certain characters that they play, and they have these journeys and adventures that they have to go on. And so they can have like a campaign that would last a day, or they can have a campaign that will last months. And somebody will be like the dungeon master. And so they'll lead the group, but they'll let the group make their own decisions. And so I think at one point they were saving children by throwing them into a bag and then carrying them out somewhere and setting them free. I don't even know. It's just weird. But yeah, it's a role playing game that they sit around a table and they just go on adventures for hours on end.
I love that you guys can minister and share the gospel of Jesus Christ by using a role playing game as a tool.
Yeah.
That tool that is, not really a Christian thing, like, I don't know,
Mhm.
Dungeons, Dragons, fairies, all of that. Like, I don't really think of that as a way of telling the gospel. And yet, by gathering these kids at your living room table day after day, serving them food,
Yeah.
having conversations, what kind of fruit have you seen come from these gatherings?
We've seen some amazing fruit. We've had a lot of questions from some of the kids. One in particular, his name is Alex. We've already told him, we've shared his story. And so, because his story is just phenomenal to see how God had moved. So, Alex, when he first came, he would say he would probably like push against Christianity with our kids. So, he never talked to us about it. Actually, Alex was very quiet with Chris and I. But he would wear shirts that were questionable, but we were like, it's our house. You be you in our house. We're going to love you where you're at. Well, then again, like the war in Ukraine happened,
Mhm.
and we started to have some Ukrainians come to the church who didn't speak English, and they spoke Ukrainian and Russian. So I had asked the boys, hey, do you know anybody who speaks Russian? And they're like, oh, yeah, Alex does. I said, oh, well, would you ask him if he would be willing to come translate at the church? The church will pay him however much he wants, and every Sunday. And so Alex, they contacted Alex right away, and Alex said, sure, absolutely. And so he came to church just because he was translating for this
It
Ukrainian
was a
family.
job.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's like, yeah, money. Great. I'll take money. 25 euro for a couple of hours a day. Awesome. And so, yeah, he did that. And he was sitting back there, and week after week, he would be sitting with Igor, and he would say, hey, do you know what you're talking about? And Alex is like, not really. I'm just saying words. So Igor started like just sharing the gospel with Alex. And Alex, like, I think it was July 2 years ago, was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to give my life to the Lord. And he
Oh,
did. And so, and it just started with them getting to know Alex with D&D, and then the war in Ukraine, and God's sovereignty just brought Igor to our church. And yeah, it was just amazing. So now we're in the process of where every Sunday we've gone through the Gospels with Alex and Acts, and we're in the process of reading Judges with Alex. And
Like
we're,
Dungeons and Dragons,
yeah,
the book of Judges there,
yeah,
Same.
yes, he gets it. So yeah, he'll share the Lord with his friends as well. And he engaged together. It's been great seeing God move.
Do you feel like this is the purpose of you guys being in Ireland?
I think that's why it took so long to get here. It took us 5.5 years to raise our support to get to Ireland. And it was always, God, why? Why are you waiting? What are you doing? Um, and there was a lot of whys, and 2020, hindsight 2020, right?
Yeah.
And if we had moved here when the kids were younger, they probably wouldn't have met any of the D&D kids, because it's not the same here with school. If you move into a neighborhood, you don't automatically go to that school. If that school is filled, you have to go to other schools. And they didn't get accepted to the one that's right down the street from our house. We had to drive them 10 to 15 minutes away to school every day. And that's where they met these kids. And so I see what God's doing.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's still hard. But it's still awesome.
What has kept you going? Like 5-6 years to raise the support. I probably would have questioned my choices and maybe quit. Why didn't you guys quit?
God he just shows up when you're at your lowest, and you go, God, why are we doing this? We had traveled to Texas, and we were speaking to some churches and some people, and there was nothing coming from it. And Chris and I were like, what's the point? What are we doing here? We walk into the hotel, and there was a wall of shamrocks in Texas.
In Texas.
What? That was the least expected thing. Or we would get that encouragement again from our village, the people who are walking alongside of us, picking us up when we were at our lowest and saying, we've got you. You know that this is where God has called you. You keep fighting the fight, and we're going to fight with you. And so, yeah, again, if it wasn't for those people walking alongside of us, God providing that encouragement, through little and big ways, I think we would have just been done. But God had a purpose and a plan, and he just kept us going even in the hardest times.
Oh, I love that. I feel like that's an encouragement that anyone can take in whatever circumstance they're dealing with, because we are so tempted to quit when the going gets tough.
Yeah.
But you don't end up with a blessing on the other side if you quit.
Yep. Absolutely. It's true. And, we're not meant to walk this world alone. We're not. We need to have those people who walk with us. We've got some great people walking with us in the States and here in Ireland. And, we are so thankful and blessed to have them.
Yeah. How did you end up with them? How do you go about making friends and creating these friendships?
As you get older, it's hard. It really is. But like I said, I latched on to somebody, and I was like, yeah, you're going to be my friend. So I would see her and her family at church, and I would go and talk with her. She and her husband are a hoot here in our marriage study. They make us laugh so hard. They're just so funny. And they're real and they're authentic, which is not always easy to find, and so, and then other people who we are friends with as well, it's just taking the time and to realize, like I had said, everybody has a story.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to hear their story. I wanted to know, oh, we have a Brazilian friends. How'd they get to be here in Ireland? You're from Brazil, what are you doing here? We have some friends from Ghana. What are you doing here in Ireland? And then we've got that Irish couple who are our best friends here. And it's been great just hearing stories.
So I wanted to ask you if there's anything else you wanted to mention or talk about community and friendship.
Yeah, community is vital. The friends that you have, keep pouring into, and don't be afraid to make new ones. We don't have to be so stuck in just our group of people. We can branch out and see that person who looks to be alone and just might need somebody. Because like I said, as we get older, I mean, I'm 48. I never thought I'd have to make new friends at 48. But it's not easy to do. And so if I feel that way, I know that there are other people who feel that way too. And so I want to make sure that I'm not just on the receiving end of a friendship, but I'm also giving and looking for people who could use an uplifting word or a hug or drawing them in and making them be my friend. So yeah, just keep looking for people that you can be a part of community with, no matter what your walk of life.
Yeah, I think sometimes the church gets accused of being in this exclusive club.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it almost is harder because we're so focused on creating godly friendships that we
Mm-hmm.
miss out on collecting people that don't believe like we do yet.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We don't know what God's plan for that is. And I just love hearing that the church was willing to hire Alex because I think growing up in a Christian church, it would be like, well, what does your faith walk look like? We can't have you minister if you're not a part of the
Gosh.
church or a part of this community.
Mm.
You have to become a member. There's churches like that, and I just
Mm-hmm.
love that there was a need. This kid filled a need,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like reciprocated in a way where the person who was in need ended up being ministering to Alex in a sense and bringing him to faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I just love that you guys are collecting people no matter what different cultures, different walks of life, maybe even different faiths. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
would encourage, like as you're building your village and you're trying to figure out who will be my friends, like not be so afraid of collecting friends that are on the fringes that
Mm-hmm.
may be passed over by somebody else. Everybody has a story, and God can work in every story, in every friendship. And you have been a prime example of that for me. I love hearing about all of those stories that you guys share in your newsletter or when we get to sit in person at the table. What is next for you guys in Ireland?
Gosh, we are in the process of trying to get our citizenship. So a year from, I think, July, we can apply, which is great. So if we get dual citizenship, that means that our middle son can get a job, because right now, based off of our visa, he can't work. So our goal is to get dual citizenship so that he can do that. And then, yeah, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, you know?
Do you speak Irish yet?
No, but I am learning Russian so
Oh,
that I can talk with Alex's mom and have coffee with her one day.
that is so awesome. You can talk to me
Yeah.
too because I speak
So,
Russian.
oh, yes, I'm on like day 450 and I'm
is,
still really confused, but
is
I'm
this
trying.
Duolingo?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. My two
Yeah.
sons are learning Russian as part of their second language in
Oh,
high school.
I love that.
All the different endings, all the vocabulary, the
Oh,
adjectives change along with the noun,
yep.
feminine, masculine, neuter. Boy, they're having a time. To me, it's just natural. I just hear it and I know the right way to say it, but it is so hard to teach that.
It
So,
is.
mad
Yeah.
respects for learning Russian.
Alex will ask me periodically, what have you learned today? And I'll be like, I know how to say women and men. So, like, they eat bread. That's about it. So, I'm not ready to have coffee with your mom yet. So he
Ah,
just laughs. So,
that is
yeah.
so awesome. Well, Joy, it's been a joy to talk to you. Every time I get to sit across from you, it has always been a blessed time. And so I really
Thank you.
appreciate you making this time. It's morning here in California. What time is it in Ireland?
Right now it is 4:47, but we haven't had our spring forward yet. That happens on Easter.
Oh,
So, yeah, then we'll be a good 8 hours ahead of California.
yeah.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Technology is amazing that we get to do this and have
it is.
conversations. Well, thank you for joining us today. Please say hello
Thank
to your
you.
lovely family
I
and
will.
let's do this again sometimes.
Thanks for having me. Thanks so much.
Yep. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Joi as much as I did. I love hearing about her faith, not giving up when things didn't look like she dreamed, about her boys being back in Colorado while they're living in Ireland, the D&D group that they do, all of this ministering in Ireland. It seems to be happening one-on-one through friendship, through community. I would encourage you to look around you and see who's on the fringes of your life and bring them in because they all have a story to tell. And we might just be the listening ear that God will use to bring this friendship about in their lives. So thank you for joining us today on We the Village. Don't forget to hit subscribe here on YouTube and follow us on all the socials at We the Village Podcast.